The Dance of Opposites, Explorations in Mediation, Dialogue, and Conflict Resolution Systems with Dr. Kenneth Cloke, part of the series Titans of Mediation with seasoned mediator, trainer Dr. Barbara Sunderland Manousso. That is your topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact dependent. Hi, everyone. This is Mac about Florida, Texas.
And I am Natalia Łowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
And I'm Dr. Barbara Manousso from Newport, Rhode Island, and Houston, Texas. And today I am honored and just delighted that we have as our guest Dr. Kenneth Cloke. And actually, it's Judge Kenneth Cloke. And so we're happy to be able to say that. And he is absolutely a titan of mediation who has helped people think beyond their thoughts on or self-thoughts for mediation or conflict management. And his book, which is one of many that he has written, is on the dance of opposites. And so it talks about how some conflicts, what the genesis of the conflicts can be in some cases and in different scenarios. So welcome, Judge Cloke, Dr. Judge Cloke. And you have so many titles. You have such exquisite background as an attorney, as a judge, and also that you have devoted so much of your life to conflict management and helping others realize and develop and to think through their thoughts also that are involved with conflict management. So what inspired you to write the book, The Dance of Opposites? What was your moment that you said this needs to be memorialized?
Well, I think that the basic idea came from not one source, but a combination of different sources. What the book looks at are a series of different problems in conflict resolution that are apparently scattered and disconnected. But beneath the surface, there is a profound interconnection between them. And so the opening chapter, for example, is called The Language of Conflict. And if we stop for a moment and ask ourselves, how do we talk about conflicts with one another? Several things will come to mind. First, we can ask an interesting question. When you are about to have an argument, what is likely to be the very first word out of your mouth? And you are beginning to argue with another person. And the chances are quite good that that word will be the word you. What do we know about the word you? Well, it's a pronoun. What is the form of the pronoun? And the answer is it takes the form of an accusation. What is the likely response to any accusation? Answer, denial and counter-accusation. No, I'm not, and you're something worse. And so we can see that from the very first word, this conversation is doomed. So what are the alternatives? Well, if we look at the other pronouns, we can see that each of them has a different kind of form and a different kind of outcome. If we take, for example, the word you, and we add now some further words to it. Let's say the phrase is, you are lazy. Okay, what if we say instead, they are lazy? What's the form of that? Well, the answer is it's a stereotype. And what are you going to get as a result of the stereotype? Answer, prejudgment. You're going to prejudge people based on the category that you fit everybody in. So you've lumped people together. And what's the outcome going to be? The answer is stereotyping, discrimination, bias, prejudice, etc. But there are some other pronouns we could use instead. For example, what if we define the problem as an it? What would that sound like? Well, it would be this. There's a lot of work to do. How should it be divided? Notice the difference. The content is the same, but if you say you are lazy, you're going to get defense and counter-accusation. But if you say there's a lot of work to be done, how should it be divided? You're going to get conversation and some problem solving. You can also use the word I. What would that look like? Well, that can take two forms. One, a confession, which is, I feel terrible because I'm working hard here and you're not helping. And if you really cared about me, you would be doing something to help me. The second form of I is a request. That is, I need some help. Can you give me a hand? Notice once again, the content is identical to you are lazy. But can you help me? Is a fundamental shift in the nature of the conversation. And finally, there's a we, which is, we have a lot of work to do. How should we divide it? And each one is an invitation into a fundamentally different kind of conversation. So the goal of a conflict resolver may be, for example, simply to shift the pronoun from a you or a they or a he or she into an it or an I or a we. But now let's move on to the second word. You are. That's a verb. The verb to be. And what do you get as a result of using that word? The answer is a judgment. You feel like you are being judged as a person, as a human being. You are this. What's the alternative? The alternative is to say, this is what you did. And if you say, this is what you did that I don't like, we can have a different kind of conversation than this is who you are. And now if we reflect on this for a moment, we can see that if someone says you are lazy, all that they are really doing is telling you how they feel about what you did. That's all. Except we've misinterpreted it because we've taken it too literally. This is the dance of opposites. The dance that begins with a simple word and then becomes more complicated. And now let's take a look at the last word, lazy. That's the accusation. So what do we understand about the word lazy? Well, the first thing is we can see that it is a negative, indirect way of telling someone what your interests are. The word lazy is a way of telling them negatively and indirectly, and therefore not very effectively, that you want some help. That's what your interest is. And every insult contains a negative, indirect indication of what your interests are. Second, it is a negative, indirect statement of emotion. And the more powerful the insult, the more stinging, the more emotional information is packed in that insult. So every single insult has less to do with the person who's being insulted than it has to do with the one who's insulting. meaning it's a little mirror reflecting right back on you. So if I choose the word lazy as an insult, what would make me choose that word? Well, the answer is it would have to be an insult to me, because I wouldn't choose a word that wasn't an insult to me. And therefore, what I am saying is I am hard driving and don't give myself permission to take time off. And if I see you not working, I'm actually jealous and wish I could do the same. That information is contained automatically in the word lazy. There is another deeper still meaning of the word lazy. And that is what it reflects is a deep-seated relational fear. What is that? He doesn't care about me. He doesn't respect me. He doesn't think I am worthy of being helped. That's really deep. But the point of it is, if we understand that this is what is going on beneath the scenes, if this is actually what the dance is about, then we, as mediators, can help people figure out what is important to them, what is meaningful to them, and find some solution. So that's an example just from that first chapter.
Dr. Cloke, who would you say is the audience for this book? Because some of it might be, I could imagine it being used even in a marriage counseling setting between spouses and the ways they communicate. Do you think individuals could get it from the bookstore and work on their own relationship with it? Or is it something that's a bit more academic and theoretical that should be, given just to mediators to help resolve conflicts?
I didn't write it in an academic way. It is really for people who want to get deeper into what's going on. But if you take just, for example, there's one chapter which is about working with couples and people in marriages and relationships and families around conflict resolution issues. And this really grew out of a set of experiences that I had mediating prenuptial agreements between people who wanted to get married. And what happened is, what they would do is they'd go to a lawyer, and the lawyer would begin negotiating their divorce, even though they're not married yet.
Mm-hmm.
And this was incredibly frustrating and upsetting for them. And so my very first question meeting with them was, does this feel funny to you that you're talking about your divorce and you aren't even married yet? And they would say yes and breathe a kind of sigh of relief. And then I discovered that there were some other questions that I could ask that were very powerful, starting with, how did you meet? What do you love about each other? Why would you like to marry this person and spend the rest of your life with them? And then getting a little bit deeper. What does the word marriage mean to you? What does the word husband mean to you? What does the word wife mean to you? And now let's talk about your family of origin. What kind of marriage did your parents have? What role did your father play? What role did your mother play? How did they handle money in your family of origin? Do you want to do it that way, or do you want to do it different? How did they handle illness? How did they handle conflict? How did they handle intimacy or requests for intimacy? How do you want to handle it? In other words, what we are trying to do is to help them design from scratch the kind of marriage they want to have, and not slip into the kind of marriage that they have grown up with in their family of origin. How do you do that? You bring conscious attention to the patterns. So part of this is an idea, which is that a marriage is a system, and that system can be redesigned in ways that allow the couple to actually have some conscious control over the kind of relationship they want to have with each other. That can be done, and it can be done through the mechanism of conflict resolution. Because what is conflict? It's just the sound made by the cracks in that system.
What you have been actually explaining to us is actually shifting our understanding of how we express ourselves to
Mm,
a different level. We, of course, everybody who has, let's say, educational brain might say, "Oh, I am absolutely conscious and aware of what I am saying." But they might be aware of what they are saying. They are not aware of how it is being received,
mm,
how it touches the other side. And I understand that this book teaches how to understand your words, the words you are telling to other people, the way they will be understood, not the way you mean them originally, because there might be a huge discrepancy between what you mean, then between what you say, and between what is being received the other end. And when we see the today's world, on top of that, there is always this communication via internet or communication where we lack all the facial expressions that help us, all the let's say touch or things that help. So there is so much that can cause even greater confusion in all that, because what we're being left with in the virtual world when we speak over Zoom or do recordings like that, what we are getting is just verbal communication, where so much of these other ways of transmissions are lost. However, what I found interesting about your book, and this is probably something that's going to play well for Dr. Manousso as well, you called it a dance.
Mm.
So a dance is something where people interact. There is a and without good cooperation in dancing, there will not be a good dance. So one thing is what we say, but the other thing, well, how it is being received. What about the other party? So you communicated with us now a very fantastic example of how to pay attention to how we address the issue that we are to discuss. But if we are the recipient of this sort of a message,
mm.
you are lazy, what is then the response?
Perfect. Okay. So there, I think that the important piece of this, and thank you very much for that question, Natalia. This is really excellent. Um, what is essential is to see that um, two people create a conversation, and two people also create a story. And every conflict is a kind of story that people tell about what happened. And here there are three stories that are told. Story one, the story you tell other people. Story two, the story you tell yourself. And story three, what I call the core story, is the reasons why you made up those other two stories. And that's the deeper piece. The listener helps bring the story into existence by the quality of their listening and by the kind of questions that they ask. So there are thousands of questions that can be asked. And what we want to do is to find the question that will allow people to gain some insight and perspective on the places where their story doesn't make sense or misses the mark or doesn't connect with the listener, or is actually saying something deeper than what is contained within the story. So most conflict stories take the form of an accusation, as I was indicating before. Beneath every accusation is a confession. Beneath every confession is a request. And now what we can do is we can shift to the request. And we can simply ask the question, why does that matter to you? Why does this mean so much to you? Let's take a different example. Let's say, for example, the accusation is, you are a bully. What do we say in response? One question that we can ask is, what are you trying to achieve by yelling at me? What are your goals for this conversation with me right now? Would you like to know how you could be more effective in achieving what you would like to achieve with me right now? Would you like some coaching on how to talk to me? Another approach would be to go still deeper and ask a set of questions that I think of it as stopping people in their tracks, that are really interventions. Here's probably my favorite. In the middle of the yelling and screaming and shouting and accusations, just interrupt and say, excuse me, can I ask you a question? And they may not even give you permission initially, but sooner or later they will give you permission. Here's your question. Is this conversation working? They know it isn't. They'll say no. Would you like it to work? They'll say yes. Why would you like it to work? And now, here's another thing you can say. What is one thing I can do that will make this conversation work better for you? And would you like to know one thing you can do that will make it work better for me? Are you willing to try that right now? I'm willing to. Can we start over and see how we do? Here's another one. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being highest, how would you rank the conversation that we are having right now? What is one thing that we could do to make it rank better? And then after you have that conversation, how are we doing right now? How is the conversation we're having now? And now, what would it take to make it a 10? Okay, really, you have to stop and think about these things for a moment and realize you're off track here. Now, what is it that's gotten you off track? Can we look at that? Once again, if we assume that every conflict conversation is a request, that is beneath every accusation is a kind of request, what is the request for? And I think that the answer is for someone to care enough about you to try to find out what the problem is. So here's another question that I like very much. What question would you most like me to ask you right now?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a real good.
Yeah. And what question would you most like me to ask you right now? And now, there's another one if you want to get seriously dangerous. What question would you most like me not to ask you? What question are you most afraid that I will ask you?
Oh, wow.
Tough one.
Well, again, this has been an absolutely informative, thought-provoking, and helpful, actually, because the more mindful we are of some of the nuances that we bring and receive in moments that could create conflicts, these are all items that you seem to be addressing and breaking down and making them quite digestible. So again, thank you so much. You have many hats, so we can call you judge, we can call you doctor, we can call you author, but I think he overall is a titan of mediation. And so for that, we praise you and thank you for what you have contributed to the field of conflict management and resolution. And your book, The Dance of Opposites, with Dr. Kenneth Cloke absolutely is a must read for anybody who's breathing and who has any other person in their life in any shape or form. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
We value your time and we honor your information. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you
Thank
all
you
very much.
Thank you.